Chapter 6 covers deviance. Let's talk for a moment to put deviance into context about courtship. When a student is interested in another student, he or she may make the effort to attend parties or meetings that they normally wouldn't attend just to run into the object of his or her interests. Or also something we would define as being normal would be stopping by the person's workplace if their workplace is public and or retail or service oriented. But when does the line between what's normal and deviant get crossed? Generally, they're fuzzy and objective. When you start looking at things like gathering information about the person, looking them up on Facebook or Googling them, that's kind of considered normal also. And it's acceptable to ask someone for their phone number. Gathering information becomes deviant, though, when the information is private or when consent is not given. Proposing collective activities is common, but an everyday event becomes deviant when the proposals are repeatedly confused and the person continues to ask. So things like tone, frequency, reciprocity, and consent are all dimensions that are involved in whether a romantic courtship is considered normal or deviant. So we'll look at the difference between what generally is considered to be normal behavior and that which is considered to be deviant behavior. Which of the following would be considered acts of deviance? Driving faster than the posted speed limit, yelling at your spouse in the movie theater, grocery shopping in bare feet, or texting friends during class. Actually, all four of these are considered acts of deviance. There are times when deviance is considered positive. Is that true or is that false? Actually, it's true. There are certain acts that can be principled acts because they generate a positive rather than a negative reaction. This often happens in hindsight once people have had a chance to consider the good that has come from the act. The example of Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on a bus that led to the bus boycott, which had a very powerful influence on the civil rights movement, was an act of deviance, but it generated a positive outcome. So when a sociologist refers to an act as deviant, she or he is making a moral social judgment, B, personal social judgment, C, social personal judgment, or D, social moral judgment. And the answer is D, social moral judgment. A deviant behavior is one that violates the norms of a particular group. The very same behavior may not be considered deviant among other groups during a different time period. Defining an act as deviant does not mean that the act is inherently wrong. Definition: deviance is a behavior, trait, or belief that departs from a norm and generates a negative reaction in a particular group. Defining something as deviant requires examining group norms and group reaction to a behavior. Deviance isn't necessarily bad, it's just different from what the group considers to be normal. For instance, a woman having a size 13 shoe isn't bad, but it's definitely different. So it may elicit a reaction from the group that makes up the majority, in this case those with average shoe sizes. When sociologists use the term deviant, they are making a social judgment, not a moral one. It's important to also consider that what is deviant in one culture may not be deviant in another culture. If you look at these images, ask yourself whether they represent examples of norms of deviance in the United States. We think about the sociologist C. Wright Mills, who talks about how norms change over time. Was tattooing a norm in the 1900s, the 1950s, and the 2000s? What social factors might influence these changing norms?